A very good morning. It's 13 minutes past 11. I'm Tina Dahili. You're listening to the Asian Network. Now, next we turn our attention to Bangladesh. Avijit Roy, Vashaka Rahman, Ananta Bijoy Das and Niloy Neil. These are the names of the 4 bloggers who were hacked to death in Bangladesh this year. Last week, 3 people were arrested in Bangladesh over the murders. One of the 3 arrested is a British Bangladeshi man, 58-year-old Tawhidur Rahman. He's accused of masterminding the killings. He's thought to have spent 20 years in England before moving to Bangladesh in 2012 to join an extremist group. Like India, Bangladesh is considered a secular country by its constitution, but many say that is now changing with the rise of religious extremism. So today we'll be unravelling some of the issues that Bangladesh is facing in the 21st century and exploring how its religion and politics is impacting British Bangladeshis. Joining us in the studio, Arif Rahman, an atheist blogger who was linked to those who were killed, Shadia, Syed, the journalist and broadcaster from Bangladesh. And joining me live from Oxford is Dr. Rayhan Rashid, an academic blogger and rights activist. And live from Bangladesh is Sohini Alam, a British Bangladeshi singer. Thank you all for joining our discussion today. Arif, I'm going to start with you because you had close links to those who were killed. Can you tell me how you knew them? Who you knew?
Sure, thank you. Back in 2006-07, when the whole blogging as a concept in Bangladesh started, actually throughout the world, the idea of somebody able to opening up their own blog and then write about their own opinion as a trend started. In Bangladesh it also started, and a lot of us who were in Bangladesh and also living abroad, because there is a big expatriate community of Bangladeshis throughout the world, we started seeing trends of Islamization. And also at the same time, we felt that the need for religion is kind of going down. So as an atheist blogger, we started this movement inside Bangladesh. We talked about the problems of religion, and we realized that we are not the only one. There is a lot of people inside Bangladesh and throughout the world who were actually of that psychology. And since then, the number of bloggers exponentially expanded, and it kind of created a snowball effect, which kind of ended or resulted in this mess we are in Bangladesh right now.
Was it controversial from the very beginning? Because these deaths have come to prominence globally and have had lots of media attention this year. But how was it received when it started, this blogging movement, back in 2006?
I think it was at that time quite limited to only the bloggers who were actually quite active in blogging community platforms. It only came to the knowledge of the rest of the Bangladeshi population who's not bloggers or not well connected through publication media and television news, when the Islamists supported media took an interest on what we were talking about. So in the beginning, we used to see a lot of opposition from the Islamists. They used to threaten us, but mostly online. We never took that too seriously.
What types of threats? What were they?
As profane as it can get.
Online, on those blogs?
On those blogs, openly, directly, and their first opinion was saying that they would challenge us, that you're saying these things from the safety of an anonymity and an online blog. Why don't you just come down and meet us on the streets? That was their kind of invitation to us.
At that point, did you report this to anybody?
We didn't think we need to report this, because at that time we kind of didn't even pay attention what they were saying. We used to think them as a nuisance rather than somebody venting their anger. So reporting that, I think, only started as a thought process when we saw the first killing, and we realized that this is a quite good reality.
Okay, and going back to the first part of the question, your links to those who were killed.
Oh yeah, so you may have heard of this 84 bloggers list, which is kind of infamous list that
the hit list.
The hit list. Back in 2013, all the Islamist parties, along with government, sat down together and kind of formulated this list. And it's actually, I wouldn't want to disclose too much, but it's actually part of a work group of sort that we were part of. And obviously there were quite intelligent people from the Islamist side who were monitoring what we were saying, and they were making a register of some sort that they exchanged with the government. So yes, I know all of them who died, and I had quite good direct relationship with all of them.
And you were with Avijit before he died?
Yes, quite surreal actually. I met him an hour before in the book fair, and he was attending a book revelation, kind of an opening ceremony of some sort, semi-formal. And we were actually supposed to meet the next day for a long day of chit-chat and adda, and they kind of get together. So after like 15 minutes or so, I wanted to go and meet few of my other friends, and he said, okay, no worries, we'll meet tomorrow. And within an hour, somebody called me, because the first news that went into the television is that my name was mentioned. Arif Rahman with his wife is attacked. Somebody called me, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm okay. What's happening? Because at that moment I didn't know what's happening. So then said, no, some blogger is hit. Then within few minutes it occurred to me it could be, I need to call Avijit Roy. So I called him and his phone was not answering. And within few minutes we realized, so we rushed to the hospital, and the moment we arrived from the emergency operation theater, the guys were coming out and they said the patient expired. I mean, I still feel the switch in my body that we knew that he was hit, but we didn't know how bad it was. And when we saw his dead body, it was quite brutal. So it's surreal meeting somebody an hour ago and then seeing him drenched in his own blood in an hour later.
Have you come to terms with what happened in any way since then? Because it seems at the beginning when you were getting threats, it sounds like that you didn't really think they'd be acted upon necessarily.
Yeah.
And then you have this extreme.
Yes, I mean, this was the beginning. So Avijit Roy was murdered, and then every month almost, every other month, we heard one of our friends being killed. Even on my messenger list, if I scroll down, I still see people's name who are no longer there. And I don't know how many people actually experienced that firsthand. It's quite shaking. I don't know how I'm dealing with the trauma, but I guess we need to push ahead. That's what we were doing. Their death cannot be in vain.
Shadia, I'm going to come to you next. You're a journalist and broadcaster in Bangladesh. What was the media reaction to these killings?
Thank you very much for inviting me onto the show today.
Thank you for coming in.
Just like to clarify one thing. I'm not from Bangladesh.
Okay.
I'm actually British Bangladeshi from here. And I travel back and forth between here and Bangladesh. I work in Bangladesh and I work here.
Do you work in the media over there as well?
Yes, I work in the media in both places. The media, I wasn't actually in Bangladesh when these incidents took place, but from the feedback I've got, obviously there is nobody who can condone any of these attacks. We condemn them thoroughly. Nobody has the right to take anybody else's life, regardless of what anybody's belief is. I just heard Arif's story, and I really did feel, I did feel a lot for you. It's awful, and especially to hear that his name was the first one that was mentioned. Thankfully, he's still here, but unfortunately, his friend is no longer with us anymore. The media on the whole, but it's not just the media. Nobody will accept anything like this, regardless of what your beliefs are, regardless of where you work or what you do. It is unacceptable to take anybody's life. You don't have the right to do that.
I'm going to go to Dr. Rayhan Rashid now. Thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you, Tina, for inviting me.
What's your perspective on this?
I was actually listening to Arif, and I think it is too difficult for all of us to talk about Avijit and others in past tense. Particularly, Arif knew all four of them. I personally worked with only Avijit. He was part of a network we run that is to support the justice process in Bangladesh, to try the war criminals. And he was also actually part of one of the blogging networks we had, like all the blogs. We have an alliance at the admin level. That was actually set up after the first murder happened in 2013 when Rajiv Haidar was killed. And Avijit was very much a part of it, and he actually, and I think even before few days before he was killed, we were talking about Section 57. I think that would come up in the discussion later on. With the blogger killings, and I thank Arif actually, because he gave a perspective of how it started from 2006, 2005, from back in those days. But I would also like to mention that it was the blogging movement. It needs to be mentioned that it was a very diverse movement. Like, people used to write on all sorts of things. Blogging movement was not necessarily synonymous to secular, atheistic, or atheistic writing, or on a particular agenda. Well, the secular writings and atheistic writings were very prominent, very dominant. There were many bloggers and very bright bloggers, and there are bloggers who solely wrote on art, culture, literature, also on nationalistic issues like war crime trials. And ironically, there were also a huge number of bloggers actually from the Islamist side, like from Jamaat Islami supporters. They also actually took up blogging. So that was kind of the environment. But Arif rightly said that there were trolling, there were bad behaviors online in the blogging platforms. And we saw that as nuisance. But things were not actually this bad, like when someone can be killed for blogging. So that is something we started realizing after 2013. And I think that had a huge negative impact, I would say, like a very demoralizing impact on the blog, on bloggers in general. So I think that is one aspect of it. With the bloggers, the one thing we need to understand is blogs in Bangladesh, now they used to be considered as the last remaining free space for discourse, discussion, and everything. And whatever is free, as we can predict, or as we can understand, that whatever is considered free, that represents potentially a principled resistance, and therefore it can be perceived as dangerous by many quarters, and in this case particularly by the Islamists. And another thing is the blogging itself, apart from generating opinion, it also played a huge role in shaping a whole generation's opinion.
Right.
Opinion on all sorts of things, on religion, on nationhood, on justice, on so many issues. I think these are the perspectives that brought blogging at the forefront, and blogging became synonymous to activism. Actually, both went hand in hand.
Okay, all right, I'll leave it there for now. I'm going to try to speak to Sohini now, who is actually in Bangladesh. Good morning. Sohini?
Morning.
Good morning. Sohini, what's the reaction been there where you are?
Where I am at this point, I think now people are obviously troubled by something like this happened, but life goes on. People here have so many things to do in their daily life that they're moving on with things. But obviously there is an undercurrent of being quite worried about this trend, as I would expect. When people are being killed for having ideas, that's obviously something that affects the general population.
Okay. Arif, what do you think, well, in fact, I'll rephrase this question. Do bloggers feel, including yourself, feel protected by the government in light of what's happened?
No. It's quite funny, actually, because this is one of the reasons we were able to speak so freely before 2013. We were under the impression that the government at that time was Awami League government, which proclaims it's a secular constitution government. We assume that because...
You say claims, it's in the constitution.
Yeah, that's why I said claimed, but the actions were not so much similar to what was written in their constitution, let alone the Bangladeshi, government's or state's constitution. So, but our false belief started to shatter down when we saw that the first killing of Thaba Baba Rajiv Haidar back in 2013 February. Immediately after that, the Islamists launched a massive media campaign against the bloggers. And during that whole time, Bangladesh government just stood silent without actually trying to stop anything. They were pretending to be kind of fighting with the Islamists here and there, but generally the media, there was particularly 2 or 3 media outlets who were completely spilling venom in the media, national media. And if this sort of thing was let happen in any other countries, government would step in and sue them for violation of journalistic.
Well, that's why I was interested to hear how the media reported these events in Bangladesh.
Oh yes, this continues. The theme is basically saying that because Bangladesh is a Muslim majority predominant country, everybody unanimously agrees that atheists are bad. Being atheist in Bangladesh is social death. If you cannot declare yourself anymore. I mean, this is one of the things we wanted to start, normalizing, so that people can just say, yes, I'm atheist, I don't follow any religion. And young people were actually getting a lot more atheistic. So Bangladesh government then in 2013, end of 2013, they weaponized one of their law called Information Communication Act 2006, and they weaponized it with the addition of a special clause which was passed through bypassing the parliament. Bangladesh is a parliamentary democracy, but it bypassed it, and through a presidential decree it added that bit, and it clearly says that you could be sent to jail if it is convicted for 14 years, fined a huge amount of money, and then this is the end of it, but the beginning of it would be anybody could go to the police and claim that their religious sentiment has been hurt. Police will take it into consideration and arrest the person without asking for any kind of warrant, and he can be detained indefinitely without giving any reason. So
the law was amended to include that, so
yes.
You can't hurt religious sentiment.
Yes, and all the atheistic activities, because the definition of religious sentiment hurting is not present, anybody and everybody could potentially say, this person has hurt my religious sentiment, so take him down. This is exactly the same thing Pakistan has done 20 years ago, and since then Pakistan has kind of slipped into this Islamist infestation, I would say, where people were abusing religious sentiment or blasphemy laws to, for example, grab somebody's land or take upon somebody's vindictive behavior. So
why was the law changed?
Because Bangladesh government wanted to ensure, with the help of the Islamists, that this atheistic revolution goes back to where it was before, and the rule of Islamism remains.
Even though Muslims are the vast majority in Bangladesh.
This is the thing. The Muslims and the Islam that, for example, our parents' generation knew was no longer existence, because the Islamism that the government is helping now is actually the Wahhabism, the extremism, and that is in effect at this moment. But I don't know why there is massive lobbying from the Islamist side, and these laws are coming through that sort of channel. And there are rumors that maybe Mr. Rayhan Rashid can confirm, there may be a shadow government inside the government. There is a lot of Islamist infiltration, and obviously there is Bangladesh government's interest to not to hurt the Saudi Arabia, which is kind of the predominant Islamic leader at these days, and they dictate. For example, in Saudi Arabia, you know that atheists are actually classed as terrorists. So in Bangladesh, we are seeing this sort of trend going towards, even after the recent death of Nihal Chatterjee, Bangladesh government, rather than saying that, yes, we're going to do everything to find who's doing that, Bangladesh government in 3 different occasions, including 2 ministers, claimed and kind of warned the bloggers not to cross the line. That was their sentence, warning, as in implanting fear, and that has been the theme since the beginning.
Okay, Rayhan, so I'm going to ask you about this law then. So you can't hurt religious sentiment. Can you hurt secular sentiment?
Technically, yes, but so far we didn't see any prosecution against that. For example, there were temples and pagodas which has been attacked before. So for some reason, this particular law we see it apply only when the Muslim sentiments are hurt. But actually, I'd like to add something to Arif, what he said. May I do that?
Yes, of course.
After 2013, after Rajiv's death, I actually don't see things that simplistically. I think it would be very simplistic to say that government was specifically after the atheists so that things turned out that they did. I would say that it was more a political move to appease the Islamists. But end of the day, I agree with Arif that the result is same, that's true. But probably it is not that government was set out. It was my impression that I didn't think that the government was set out to actually promote Islamism, because the evidence we have that actually do not match with that claim. The evidence in the counter-terrorism front and in the other areas, because what we may not be happy with our current political parties or the way the government is, or the way their degree of secularity, but obviously it is not in their benefit to have an Islamist republic, because they would also be eliminated when that happens. So that doesn't make sense.
Okay, if you've just joined the discussion, we are talking about the changing face of Bangladesh, a country and community that's, I'm sure you know, coming to the news after the recent killings of 4 bloggers. If you're British Bangladeshi yourself, have you noticed a cultural change in the communities here? How have these events affected your feelings towards the country? You can call me 08459 440 445. You can speak to any of our panellists as well. I'm going to come back to you, Shadia. What have people told you who are living here? Because you spend time between both countries. How's this affected communities? What's going on in Bangladesh here?
I don't think it has affected the British Bangladeshi community here as strongly as certain people would like to believe. We are all British Bangladeshi. As I said before, we do condone what has happened there, but that's not going to affect our daily life here. In fact, we think that it's, yes, one person who has been arrested is a British Bangladeshi. As to how perhaps one of us could even think in that way is something that we find quite disturbing, but it's not going to affect any British Bengali unless they have views of, radical views or whatever you'd like to call it. It hasn't affected the community on the whole, but that's my personal belief. I'm sure Arif may have different views.
Is there a link, though, do you think, between radical movements in Britain and radicals in Bangladesh?
Personally, I don't think so. That's my personal view. I don't think there is.
Can I respond to that?
Of course,
yes.
As Sadia already mentioned, that one of the killers who have been recently arrested, Tawhidur Rahman, he turns out to be a British national, and he was linked to 2 of the murders, like Abhijit and Ananta. Mm-hmm. And what is alarming is through this arrest, a British connection is now revealed. And now, if we think that Tawhidur Rahman is just an isolated case, he's just one solitary British who went to Bangladesh and did this and that, well, I think we'll be wrong. We'll be in the wrong track. Because Tawhidur Rahman, the case of Tawhidur Rahman actually tells us to dig far deeper. Like how could someone like Tawhidur Rahman start from who went from England and went to Bangladesh and sponsor terrorism, because these killings are also terrorist incidents. And he's actually not the first one. Before that, there was a few years ago, there was another case of another British national, Faisal. I don't remember his full name. And he also funded certain terrorist activities in Bangladesh. I think this is also time we do not see it just as a Bangladeshi issue. It is also a British issue, because two of the bloggers were murdered in Bangladeshi soil, but sponsored by someone in Britain, funded by a British citizen, and that
he's
brings us
accused
to
of masterminding the killings.
Masterminding, exactly. And that brings us to question, actually, the government's de-radicalization policy. Because you know that it was all over the media. Even a few days ago, there was a news that from East London, a couple of girls, they actually went to join ISIS. So something is terribly wrong in the community that needs to be looked at. Particularly with the blogger killings, I specifically remember when the first murder happened in 2013. If you look at the media footages at that time, particularly in the community channels, you'd see that there were many participants who actually went on camera, went before the media, and kind of actually justified the murders in that sense. Like they were trying to say that, well, someone was killed, well, but they also did something very vile. They were atheists. They used to hurt religious feelings, which shouldn't be the issue at all. But that happened. So that mindset was there. So what difference does it make? Because when the mindset is there, someone just picks up a machete, someone doesn't. But the killer instinct is there, and that is actually happening in the community. We need to look at.
That mindset is actually, if I may add there, that mindset is actually shared between Bangladeshi community here in the UK as well in Bangladesh.
Exactly.
Because recently, over the last, I would say, month since the killing, a lot of activity, media activity everywhere, whenever they discuss these things, they start off saying, yes, we condemn all the killings and everything. And then it ends up in a but, saying that, but, however, these atheists should not have said these things because it does hurt the religious sentiment of the people. And the way they present this whole thing in front of the media, their attitude towards this whole incident is that, yes, they actually deserved to be killed. And that is a very bad psychological
very disturbing. I would say very disturbing, actually.
It is disturbing. And in the UK, due to the multiculturalism, due to the siloed approach to how the British Bangladeshi and maybe other Pakistani new generations were coming up, they were kind of inside a bubble, Islamic bubble, I should say. And that bubble is completely unnatural because they were infused with Saudi cultures. Also, they were actually not from Saudi. So, and that means these children, when they grow up, they have obviously skills and education.
You're talking about in Bangladesh?
No, here.
No, here. Okay.
The British Bangladeshi young generation, I think, who is the kind of the biggest audience of this show. I feel very sad. I was just speaking to Shadia before coming in here that I think we call them the lost generation because this generation, although their parents are from Bangladesh, unlike Indian newborns, they don't feel any kind of connection back to the Bangladesh. All they do is, I think, they are fed wrong information through their parent and through their channels, the multicultural channels, which is, for example, comes down from a figurehead who British government works with and empowers him, and that person is actually abuses that power and feeds them into this Saudi narrative, and they belong to that narrative quite unnaturally.
But can people here, I'd say in response to that, who are British, who have Bangladeshi roots, can they really be influenced growing up here in a democracy in the UK, be influenced that heavily by one remote figure?
Well, not
or influence it, or influence remote influences.
I think they do, because if you look at the number of ISIS fighters that is going from here to ISIS fight,
I think 700 plus.
Yes, that is an alarming number, and that's only the number that is slipping through. I think counterterrorism is trying a lot, and there is a lot of others that get caught in the net, and there's also who considers quite practically to go. And that if you see it as a pyramid, at the very bottom you have a tremendous amount of young people who's morally quite inclined to do those things, and that's connected because it feeds into that Islamist narrative rather than Muslim narrative that our parents belong to.
So
there is a
to put it in perspective, then, how much do you think that effect here, those groups, are impacting or fueling what's going on in Bangladesh?
I personally think that the killers who are actually killing doing this silent killing, or should I say secret killings, assassinating killings, either they were orchestrated from here or they get really good intelligence support from here. There has been multiple evidences in incidents that there is a kind of a Islamist cell that actually helps the local radical groups in Bangladesh. But because I'm not counterterrorism expert, I'm not from the police, I cannot verify or confirm these things. But these are kind of known things. I think Rayhan Rashid can confirm.
What happens, Tina, we have seen that for years the British government has sponsored very dubious Islamic groups. I wouldn't say Islamist groups.
The moderates.
But moderates. They present themselves as moderates. They present themselves working for community cohesion with multiculturalism and all. But but isn't it surprising?
But not
that
intentionally, obviously.
No, obviously not.
Yeah.
Obviously not. But there must be something very wrong in the intervention or in the policy level at somewhere. Because I'm not a terrorism expert either. But we see the results. So the results are very alarming. Because one East London institution, it turns out that 5 of the girls actually, they were actually linked to that Islamic institution in the Tower Hamlets of London. And there was one institution who it used to be run by someone, an Islamist leader, and who happens to be a convicted war criminal from Bangladesh.
Yeah,
he
and
was
also
convicted. I'm just not naming him, but he was a convicted war criminal, and over years, despite our calls that to extradite him to Bangladesh so that he can face justice, there was the British establishment actually ignored those calls.
There has been recent news about the Queen Mary University where quite alarmingly there has been radical preachers coming in and speaking to young people who are very easy to radicalize, and the university actually kind of supported that, not being monitoring it, and this is a trend that we see a lot in the universities that has got quite strong, Islamist student wings operating.
The interesting thing is when you mentioned that, I just remembered. The other day I was having in a social network debate, I was having an argument with someone, kind of a debate, and it was about the ISIS joining the people who are joining ISIS, and suddenly someone actually came and started defending the convicted war criminal I just mentioned, and it later turned out that he has posts like he explicitly supports ISIS. He published those things himself, and so what is that links the war criminals of Bangladesh, ISIS, an element of global terrorism, and the East London institutions, which are working with government sponsorship. So I think these things need to be looked at. Yeah. And another thing is when we tend to believe that Bangladesh is a more dangerous place, perhaps Britain is a more safer place. But I think that belief is gone. With the recent arrest, we suspected that, but we weren't so sure. But it doesn't look like the bloggers, even Bangladeshi bloggers, even if they live in Britain, I don't think they're safe.
Yeah. Hey, Shadia, I want to come to you next. Have you heard from Bangladeshi youth who sympathise with these extremist movements in Bangladesh?
No, I haven't. And I'd just like to say, obviously, Rayhan, Rashid and Arif are way more experienced in this field than I am. But I think a generalisation is being made that children or youths under the age of 25 are being radicalised and so on. We're talking about East London. Not every Bangladeshi lives in East London. I personally don't. I live in Dulwich. People do live all across the country, and we can't generalise to such an extent that these kids are doing X, Y, Z and so on. I really haven't. They are way more knowledgeable than I am on this.
No, Shadia, I agree with you. We are not actually. It was not meant to generalize.
It seems like quite a generalization.
Yeah.
It's like a blanket of these 25-year-olds and below. As Arif was saying, we would having this discussion off air that they're the lost generation. No, they're not. I don't feel so in any way. They have every. They have good education, or they have all avenues to good education. So as to whether they will get lost in this whole so-called religious field or whatever, that's in their mindset, and that's up to them. That's nobody can come and preach to them, and then they will be converted. Yeah. If it's in their...
Shadia, just to clarify, particularly I remember that I was actually referring to certain dubious Islamic institutions.
Sure, yeah.
That was what I was focusing on.
I personally actually work with a few ex-Muslim groups in London, and because these are kind of underground groups, I can't really disclose too much, but
No.
I do see a good proportion of ex-Muslims out there, and their personal experiences that they share in those secret groups are quite horrific. They're even in the UK, being an ex-Muslim or an atheist means social outcast. Their parents would come down quite heavily on them, and they cannot really come out as an atheist in their family and in their immediate social circle. And that trend is something that's very alarming. The problem is, I think not many people actually tries that. If you try that, you will notice that kind of silent barrier there. And although I'm not saying everybody's like that, and also the word I used, lost generation, I was trying to compare between the cultural aspect of those new British Bangladeshis. For example, I was born and I was lucky to be raised in Bangladesh, so I have that cultural kind of part of me. But if I speak to a British Bengali youngster, I don't really see that sort of cultural attachment to Bangladesh to them. Obviously, they are highly educated, they're quite well fit to be a British citizen, and they're quite successful, a lot of them. But when you come to, because they don't really understand or they don't feel that much with the cultural aspect of it. For example, music, the things that makes people kind of well-rounded. Their cultural is either, if they're lucky enough, they will be kind of westernized and British. If they're not, their parents will make them culturally attached to Saudi Arabia. In that gap, there is no Bengali.
With all due respect.
I would love to believe you.
Why do you disagree?
I haven't met anybody of that, and I do know very, very many British Bengalis. They are very cultured. We've got Sohini on air, but I don't know.
We've lost the line.
We've lost her, which is a shame. Sohini is a singer. She's very. I myself am a singer as well. I'm a newscaster. I'm an editor. I'm a journalist. I'm a DJ on a radio station. I'm a singer. I'm a dancer. We are very cultured. Again, this is a generalization that's coming up.
Well, if you compare between the demographic or the...
And I'm born and brought up here.
Yes, you're lucky, and I do admire you. What I'm trying to say is, if you compare between the cultural descendants of India and Bangladesh, you will see that Indians have a very good system of transmitting their culture into their children. Bangladeshis do not do that. They infuse them with Saudi culture.
No, they don't. Well, the people I know don't.
But there is this stereotype of, and I know that's where some of these people may come from or their influence, but Bangladeshis being from deprived parts of East London and from Tower Hamlets.
I think Arif is possibly better to answer that than me.
I think Sadia, there is another thing is...
there is cause of concern, that's all I would say.
Yeah.
Sadia, what Arif was saying, actually, I have actually seen both. I've seen people like Sohini, and I have also seen the other side as well. Actually, we are all limited by our own networks. So I think that plays a part on... part on what kind of people we get to meet and get to know them. So
right, exactly. It's your network, your family background. I respect everything.
But at the end of the day, Sadia, like, you cannot deny, like, you shouldn't you be concerned that when 700 and more people from young Britain go to Syria to join ISIS, to join a cause like that, growing up in a liberal society like Britain. So
there is a system of radicalization through South Asian.
Something is happening. Something is not.
Yeah.
Something is not right. So I think that is what is happening here.
What is then the future for the country's liberal writers? Because there seems to be a huge contradiction here. Bangladesh is a secular country by constitution, yet you can be sent to prison for hurting religious sentiment. So does and can freedom of speech exist in Bangladesh?
I was going to say the same thing as well.
So these are the ironies we have to deal with. Even on the scale of secularity, Bangladesh is not at the level of Britain. Let's accept that for argument's sake.
I don't think anyone would disagree.
But still, Bangladesh didn't have that many number of people joining ISIS. So,
if we talk about Bangladesh, there are two things I would like to mention here. First of all, the word secularism in Bangladesh, if you ask anybody, it actually means the different meaning from the French secularism. So in Bangladesh, it means government or the state will actually pamper all religion and proportionate to the demographic distribution. That means Islam religion gets more pampering from the government. So it's different to what...
It should be you don't live by religious rule.
Secularism generally means state doesn't
it's a separation of state from...
Exactly. Bangladesh is opposite. Bangladesh means we will pamper all religion based on demographics. Number two, when you say Bangladesh is secular by constitution, Bangladesh also has Islam as the state religion. It's written.
Was that amended?
It was amended so many times, but it's still there.
Particularly that came on in the 8th Amendment in the military regime, but that hasn't been changed.
That has not been changed recently, and that means Bangladesh, when you have a state religion declared, the old secularism goes out the window. Poof.
So for somebody like you then, Arif, you are a blogger, an atheist blogger. What are the parameters then? Do you know what is it even safe for you to be in Bangladesh, to write at all? How do bloggers in your community feel about what they can and can't do?
I think they will continue to write about it. We will continue to write, but we will be more cautious and not probably in using our own names and identities. So we will be hiding, but we will still be writing because the platform is still there. Bangladesh government does not want us to write and about these things. So their standpoint is you write about art, culture, and praise the government and possibly Islam, but do not write about humanism. Do not write about secularism because that kind of jitters the Islamist powers that we have. You would be surprised how many madrasas we have in Bangladesh. Bangladesh government, rather than controlling them, bringing them under some sort of education board because they're actually outside of control, Bangladesh actually gives them huge donations, big lands from the railway, like millions of pounds worth of land just given out so that they can build their huge barracks of radicalization. And Bangladesh government is doing that because it wants the power that it gets back from the Islamists, the foot soldiers, and that's what the government is actually relying on rather than trying to bring the Bangladesh as a forward democracy.
Shadia, do you think the global media attention means more people will be held to account?
Well, the global media has obviously taken up on the whole blogger incident and various other things. But one thing that I would like to say, sort of going off on a tangent for a little bit, Bangladesh, with all these problems, is still moving forward. There are a lot of positive things that are happening there, and the global media is helping to promote a lot of that. Yes, in recent days and in recent weeks, we have been seeing the blogger incidents on the BBC and on Al Jazeera and whatever, all international channels. But there is a lot more in Bangladesh rather than just the blogger incident alone. There is Bangladesh is now developing. It's become a middle-income country as opposed to a lower-income country. There are a lot of positive aspects going on there. So maybe not in this debate, but I thought we would be speaking about more positive aspects of the country. At some point, that's something that could be looked at.
That's what you can, but you're here to do that. If that's how you feel, that's the perspective you can bring into the conversation.
Yeah, there is a lot more besides the blogger incidents in Bangladesh. That is obviously it's a very a heinous act that has taken place 4 times in the last few months. But
so do you feel then that all of the attention it's had is also giving people a negative image of the country and its people?
Absolutely, and there's so much, because otherwise me being, as we've mentioned a number of times, being born and brought up here, how could I possibly go and work there every 3-4 months? And I do, very good high-profile jobs there. I am in the media. I am 24 hours either on the TV or radio or doing something. And I will admit that I've been very lucky. I've not had any untoward incidents in the last 10, 12 years that I've been working there. But there is a lot of positive aspects there now. And we should focus on those. Everybody in the media, even though I think Arif mentioned that the media were very excited when these acts happened. No, the media can never condone any deaths. We are human at the end of the day, of course we are, and nobody will say that, yes, this has happened. Yes, we have to report these incidents, of course you do. That's what the media is there for, but not in a negative way at all.
Well,
if I can... we've got a few minutes left, but I'll let you both respond to those comments.
Little comment there. Bangladesh is a middle-earning country, we know that, but if people don't really pay attention how this money is being made, it's actually from the exported majority is exported laborers to the Middle East, and we know the conditions those laborers are actually in. And the bloggers are actually the whistleblowers of the country. There is no one left to raise concerns about issues, and the last remaining people who are free to actually make comments about what's actually going on, and we are now being gagged by all this law and police warning. Government is warning us not to cross lines, and that is kind of a fear that they're trying to implement. We would love Bangladesh to be, I'm not against Bangladesh, I'm a Bangladeshi. That's the reason I've been doing it for the last 8 years, so that I can see a Bangladesh more secular, more prosperous. But the trend that we are seeing, observing, is quite alarming. And if the more we realize and take actions to correct them, the earlier that we can come out of this quagmire.
Rayhan, can I get your final point from you?
Adding to both of them, actually, what I would like to say that there have been some successes, like particularly at the anti-terror fronts, which we think is encouraging, at least, like because in the last few months, more than 165 high-profile terrorists have been arrested and apprehended, and particularly at the law enforcement front, with the blogger murders, we see that with the Rajiv Haidar's case, the case is going on in full scale. Out of 55 witnesses, 8 have already given their testimony, and the next date is on the 30th. I just wanted to mention that. And with the Ananta Vijay, we have 2 murders. The government got 3 suspects. Same with Abhijit. Same with Niloy murders. So there are some progress, but we'd like to see these arrests are translated properly into proper prosecution. That is one thing. And the other thing is, with the narrative of the bloggers, I would hope that we adopt a more correct narrative, because these bloggers are killed.
I'm going to have to leave it there. I'm so sorry. We've run out of time. Thank you.
Online and on your mobile. This is BBC Asian Network.
Thank you to all the guests we've been speaking to in the last hour discussing Bangladesh. It's midday. I'm Tina Dahili, live on the BBC Asian Network. Coming up between now and 1, the latest addition to the Strictly Come Dancing lineup.